Hola de nuevo, soy Ajaxins y continuemos con The Beginner's Guide con el año 2010, ah, con el capítulo Teatro. Un capítulo bastante curioso, como ahora veréis, en el que Koda hace un juego en el que estamos en un escenario y debemos interactuar con una persona que se supone que es un profesional en un campo concreto y debemos preguntarle con ese sistema de conversación improvisado ah, cosas para conseguir que nos enseñe y seguir sus pasos. Adelante, pues, continuemos.
This one took a lot longer than all the others for Coda to make. It was 4 months between this and the last one. That's twice as long as it took him to make any other game before this, and it's not like it's particularly complex, so I remember I found that a little strange at the time.
Esto no me había pasado nunca. Como veis, un escenario espectacular, aunque todo muy minimalista. Y vamos a hablar con la profesional de la cosa nada. Como veis, las opciones que nos dan son todas un poco extrañas. Y nos dicen que tenemos que ser más abiertos. Pero como veis, ninguna de las opciones parece muy adecuada. Pongamos... Y la voz no riñe. Todo un escenario muy extraño realmente. Y sigue sin estar contenta la voz. Volvemos a ver el faro.
The game ends with this eerie premonition of what's going to happen next in Coda's life. The solution to social anxiety, to fears of having to perform and having to chase success, the answer for Coda is to withdraw, to hide himself away. Which is what leads to scenarios like the stairs that slowed you down several games ago, where it just becomes harder and harder to access Coda's inner landscape because he keeps retreating. He just keeps backing away from possible connections to anyone other than himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played this game. You know, it looked to me like he was trying to justify the idea of just disconnecting yourself from the world. And that wasn't what I wanted for him or for his games. Because I feel like a lot of his games are inviting me to connect with this person, to bring him closer. But what can you do? After this, Coda went off and took another 5 months to make a new game. Like I said, I was getting concerned. First off, he's never been this explicit in his work about exactly what he's thinking. So where's that coming from? But then even weirder, his work has potentially stopped being an outlet for him. Not like he's having trouble iterating on ideas, but he literally just can't think of new ideas anymore. And in person, he was being a lot more distant than usual. Like, you know how sometimes a person will just deflect anything that you say in order to keep themselves disconnected all the time? It was that kind of thing. Here was the point in my relationship with Coda where I really started to wonder if he needed my help in some way. His games are going to get more desperate from here on out. After this game, it's almost 6 months before he finishes something new. If the last game featured Coda talking explicitly about his creative frustrations, this one turns it up to 11. Now, put yourself in my shoes playing this. Here's a friend whose work is exhibiting signs of struggle, frustration, anxiety, depression, even. And yet still, he keeps making games. He keeps throwing himself into the grinder even when he clearly doesn't have the energy for it anymore. Why? What is it for? Because from my perspective at the time and just what I knew of him, this was a result of how isolated he was. He was in his own little bubble, just sitting at his computer all day, not really showing these games to anyone, not releasing them onto the internet, and so he didn't have anyone outside of himself to connect with. He had no outlet to ground himself on. You can't talk yourself out of loneliness. It doesn't work that way. You can't be the one writing both the questions and the answers. Then there's no movement. Then there's no circulation. If all of your anxieties are being channeled into your work, then if the work ever fails, you have no backup and you're just going to crash. Seeing this game at the time that he made it, it looked really unhealthy to me. I was watching him do this to himself, and I hated it. I hated seeing him so trapped. It's like, video games are not worth this amount of suffering. This is someone I really cared about. And I used to get so much joy out of seeing him create. For him to suddenly become angry and frustrated like this, it was the worst thing for me. I don't know. This is what I felt at the time. I don't know how else to explain it. I wanted it to stop more than anything. I had never felt so rotten. I needed more than I had ever needed anything for this to stop. But it didn't stop. After finishing this one, Coda takes another 7 months and comes up with a new game.
Y llegamos el corto año 2010. Como habéis visto, poco a poco todo se vuelve más agobiante y casi como un descenso a una depresión muy profunda y muy bestia. Con el escenario del teatro da realmente la sensación de que esa persona tiene problemas y te hace preocupar porque todas esas todas esas barras que van bajando y como te vas adentrando en una prisión cada vez más interior o, o este mismo que acabamos de jugar en el que, bueno, el del espacio en el que todo el mundo parece ciego y en el que pues, la nave en la que está se supone que se estrella contra la pared, que recuerda la pared de ese acertijo. O este de ahora mismo en que la persona conversa con una especie de ente no muy claro buscando una salvación, un, un algo que le inspire a volver, a continuar, a hacer más cosas. Y al final de ese realmente se vuelve muy agobiante y muy frustrante y llega a ser desagradable. Como ves, cómo esa persona está sufriendo y ese escenario en el que vas haciendo la conversación y poco a poco se van rompiendo esas paredes, a mí me hicieron venir náuseas realmente. Porque realmente parece que esa persona lo está pasando muy mal. Y en ese punto es el que más, al menos en mi caso, me acabé identificando con el narrador, porque realmente parece que Koda necesita ayuda, aunque realmente lo está pasando muy mal. Y bueno, con estos tres juegos acaba el año 2010 y vemos empezar en mayo de 2011 un capítulo llamado La Máquina, que se refiere a esa máquina imaginaria de la que hablaba en el último juego, que busca una máquina que por lo visto era la máquina que le impulsaba a seguir. Me imagino que se trata de la máquina uh, de sus ideas, su inspiración. Y ahora crea un ambiente con el que enfrentarse a esa máquina, encontrarla. Pues nada, hasta aquí el año 2010. Vamos a dejarlo por aquí. Y en el siguiente vídeo continuaremos con el año 2011 y acabaremos y con la reflexión final.